Bravely Default was one of those games I really wanted to play when it was first released, but unfortunately due to financial issues, I couldn't really afford it alongside some other games that took higher priority in my opinion. It wasn't until last year, probably around September or so, when I finally picked up the game, but quick little story before I get into that. Before I bought the game, I actually got a few opinions from other people. One in particular, my friend Patrick, who's also my roommate at the time, he actually told me about the game and he said that he liked it, but there was a huge issue near the second half of the game that would completely destroy it for him, and probably me. But me being the optimistic one, I actually took his opinion with a kind of a grain of salt. So I eventually picked up the game and I played it, and I really liked it. It was basically Square Enix's return to the grand epic fantasy RPG setting, with a turn-based combat system that actually had some refined tweaks and a bit of a taste on its own. This would also come with a job and class system that would allow you to mix and match different job abilities so you can make your ultimate fighter based on your preferences. Think Final Fantasy III, but a lot more refined. But before we go any further, what's the premise? Basically, the world of Bravely Default is being threatened by this dark higher power who is causing all of the elemental crystals that protect the land to become corrupted. This eventually creates a great chasm that houses a great evil, and it's big enough to swallow an entire village. So now our four heroes, Tiz, Agnes, Ringabel, and Edea, must band together to put a stop to this great evil, restore the power of the four crystals, and save the world. Sounds like your typical fantasy RPG story, isn't it? Well, it pretty much is, but that's just scraping the surface because this story gets hella complicated. Alongside the main story, there's this religious rebellion going on, as well as a black market scheme. This one country is dealing with a civil war, there's a beauty pageant as well, and all four of our heroes are dealing with their own issues along the way. Speaking of which, I probably should address our four main heroes since they're pretty much the driving force of this game. Ringabel, I'd say, is my favorite character because he's got that whole suave, pretty boy thing going on, but it's mostly for comic relief, and it works. Plus, he's probably got the most complex story of all four of our heroes. I'm not going to spoil anything for those who want to play it. Edea, I'd say, is another good character. She's not the most interesting of the bunch, but she's entertaining enough, has some funny moments with the rest of the cast, and she's got strong ties to family, which is something I always appreciate. Tiz is not that interesting, to be honest. I mean, he's not a terrible character, but he's not a very good character either. He's got some good moments here and there, but for the most part, he's really just a Gary Stew. And then there's Agnes. Ugh, I'm sorry for anyone who's a fan of this character, but I can't stand Agnes. Aside from her holier-than-thou personality that pretty much coats the entire game, her character is either very annoying or, quite honestly, boring. That's one of the issues I have with this game. For as good as the gameplay is, and for how interesting the story can get at points, for the most part, I really didn't care for 50% of what was going on in terms of the characters. Artistically, the game gets the job done. I'm not really sure how I feel about the character models or the environments for the most part, but there are some places in this game that are quite a scene to look at. But probably the best part about this game is that soundtrack. This game has some of the most beautiful musical pieces I've ever heard in a fantasy RPG, and believe me, that's saying a lot. So overall, do I think the game is good? Yes. For the first half. Remember what I said about my friend Patrick telling me about the second half of this game? Well, I found out that I should have heeded that warning, because this game pulls one of the stupidest stunts I have ever seen, and it caused me to not finish the game. You'd think that in order to fight the final boss and beat the game, you have to defeat all four bosses that guard the four crystals. But no, after that, you fly into a pillar of light, and the world resets itself where you have to defeat the four bosses guarding the crystals again. And again. And again. You wanna know how many times you had to defeat the four bosses to get the true ending? 5 freaking times. I'm sorry, but if you're going to make me fight the same 4 bosses 5 times, as well as some of the optional bosses in the game, that's just lazy. I'm sorry, Square Enix, but you're better than this. I like Bravely Default, I really do. But to see this game squandered by such a horrible narrative decision, and to think I'm never going to get the true ending in my own save file because I can't get myself to sit down and fight these bosses just to do it. I could get into a bunch of other things about this game that it did and didn't do well, because frankly, there's too much to cover in just a span of 5 minutes. But if you're going to pick up this game with the intention of playing it through to the end, be warned. You're going to come to a screeching halt halfway through. And if you ask me, the true final boss and the true ending of this game, it's not worth it.